Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to go through my updated list of the best Marvel Legends figure for each MCU character. So I'm going to take you through all the different MCU characters, as many as I can possibly think of, and give you my thoughts on which figure is the best for that character. So we'll go ahead and start with Iron Man. So a lot of these, it depends on what suit is your favorite and which suit you're looking for. So with a lot of these different characters, they have different suits and different looks throughout the MCU. So I'll try and cover most of the different looks. So with Iron Man, we have the Iron Man Mark II suit from the Infinity Saga line. So this one is the best version of the Iron Man Mark II silver suit. So this one is updated, and we have the mask that goes up that has the Tony Stark head or face underneath, and just the overall sculpt of the figure is pretty good. So if you're looking for the Mark II, this is the best version for that suit. So next we have the Iron Man Mark III, which is the same as the Mark II, just with the gold and red or gold and maroon paint instead of the silver, just like in the movie from the first Iron Man. So that is also from the Infinity Saga line, and that is the best version also of the Mark III that we have. It also has the lift up helmet that has the Tony Stark head underneath. Alright, so now we're going to the Iron Man Mark 85, which is the suit that he wore in Endgame. So me personally, I think the best version of that suit is the one that came in the 2-pack with Thanos. Because that one comes with a lot of accessories, but also comes with 2 different Tony Stark head sculpts. Sort of the battle damage one where he's after he snapped, and then just the regular one, and then also the helmeted one, and it also has the hand with the Infinity Stones in it when he's about to do the snap. So I think that's the best version of that suit. Next we have the Iron Man Mark 46 suit. So this is the one from Civil War, and this is also from the Infinity Saga line. So this is a slightly updated version of the original Mark 46 from Civil War that they sort of just re-released, but updated a few things. And the best thing about it is that we have a Tony Stark head sculpt with it. So that upgrades the figure, but also they did make slight improvements on the figure itself. So in my opinion, that's the best version of that suit as well. And then we have the Iron Man Mark 7. So this is the one from the first 10 years line. So this one, this is one of my favorite suits. It's from the first Avengers movie. It looks really cool. It has the adjuster, I'm not sure what those are, the little adjuster deals on the back for when he flies and everything is pretty cool. The only thing that hurts this figure really is it doesn't have any kind of like Tony Stark head sculpt or open mask or anything like that, but the design of the suit and the paint is really good on that one. So next we have the Iron Man Mark 50. So this is the like nanotech suit that he wore in Avengers Infinity War. And there were several different releases of this suit, but I think the best version is from the Infinity War 2-pack that came with the Iron Spider. I believe it was a Target exclusive, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But this one, because the paint apps are more screen accurate, a little bit more of a maroon rather than a bright red like most of the other releases of this suit. And it also comes with a lot of the accessories from Infinity War, which is the coolest part about that suit is the nanotech. So like the scene towards the beginning of the movie where he's fighting Squidward and the other guys, and the little blasters or whatever come out to the side and everything. But it has a lot of cool accessories, so I really like that one. I think that's the best version of that suit. And there's other suits, but I didn't list all of them. These are just like the main suits. Like there's some other ones from like Spider-Man Homecoming, stuff like that, but these are some of the like main suits. Like there's the Iron Man Mark 1, a lot of those different ones, but these are the main ones I think that most people want. So now we're going to move on to Spider-Man. So this is going to be Tom Holland Spider-Man, because Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man have only really had one release. They had, well, it's the same figure, but they had the 3-pack from Hasbro Pulse, which included all 3 Spider-Mans. And then they basically just re-released Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's figures again, just with the unmasked head sculpts. So in that case, it's, I don't know. I would say probably the re-released one is slightly better, because they have the unmasked Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield heads, which is nice. But the 3-pack versions of them came with 3 sets of hands, so it's sort of give and take with those. I still slightly prefer the ones they released with the No Way Home wave, which came with the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield unmasked heads, but I wish they would have still given us the 3 sets of hands with that. So those are basically the only ones we've gotten, and the best versions. Well, also, I forgot to mention that with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, we did get the black suited Spider-Man release as well, which was a really cool figure. So it's a different look slightly. It's just like basically a repaint. Well, they did change a little bit of that suit on the chest part because the emblem's different. And then it comes with the different unmasked Tobey Maguire head with sort of the emo type look that he has, and then the symbiote type deal, which both of those are really, really cool. So those are pretty much the only releases for those characters. So for Tom Holland Spider-Man, we have the Final Swing No Way Home suit. So this one is a really good suit, and it's pretty similar to what we will see in Spider-Man Brand New Day, but it's a slightly different suit, mainly because of the logo on the chest. The one in No Way Home has a smaller logo. The one in Brand New Day is going to have a slightly longer and larger logo, but other than that, I think it's pretty similar. That one is probably one of the best overall, as far as the painted web lines. Comes with a Tom Holland head sculpt, and it comes with 3 sets of hands. So and just the design is really cool. So that is definitely towards the top of overall the Tom Holland suits and the figures in general. But then we have the Civil War suit. So this one is from the Infinity Saga line. This one isn't the greatest overall figure, but if you're looking for that sort of red and blue look, it's a decent one, and it does come with a Tom Holland head sculpt. And it's slightly better than the original one they released, but not by a whole lot. And then we have the integrated suit from No Way Home. So this one was released twice. So initially they released it just in the No Way Home wave. I think it was the first wave they did. of the integrated suit, but it's sort of a brighter red, and it didn't have the black painted lines. And then the one they released in the Hasbro Pulse exclusive 3-pack with all 3 Spider-Mans, I think is the best version of that suit. So it has the black painted lines. The red is a little bit darker, which I feel like is more accurate. And then also it comes with 3 sets of hands. So I think that's the best version of that suit if you're looking for that suit. And it's a pretty cool suit. I think that's one of my favorites as well. And then next we have the Iron Spider suit. So this one has had, I believe, 3 different releases. So I had the original one. I don't think it had the gauntlets. I'm not 100% sure on the first one. But and then they did a re-released one that came in that 2-pack I was talking about earlier with the Iron Man Mark 50, which was a Target exclusive. So this, I think, is the best version of that Iron Spider because it has the gauntlets like it's supposed to. Then it has a little peg piece on the back to where you can actually plug in the little claws, which is cool. And it comes with the Tom Holland unmasked head as well. So that is definitely the best version of the Iron Spider for Marvel Legends. And then here recently, they have sort of the A-list line, the ones where they just sort of keep them in stock of the Iron Spider. That one I think is probably not the best because it has like a peg hole in the back from where they did the one for the Target exclusive, but they just left the peg hole in the back. It looks sort of weird. And the legs get pretty gummy. Well, on all the Iron Spiders they get pretty gummy, but yeah, the Target exclusive 2-pack one is your best version of that because it comes with claws and the unmasked head. So if you like the Iron Spider, that's your best bet there. And then there's been several other suits for Tom Holland, obviously, like the homemade suit. We've got the the upgraded suit, which is just the red and black suit from Far From Home. He also wore it in No Way Home. For that one, for the red and black suit, I think your best bet is the Walmart exclusive one. So it comes with a Tom Holland head sculpt, an unmasked version, but it still doesn't have the painted in web lines. But if you're looking for that suit, I actually like that suit quite a bit with the red and black. I think it looks nice and it's pretty simple, but I do wish they would have done the black painted in web lines, would have made that better. But if you really like that suit, I would get the Walmart exclusive one that comes with the Tom Holland unmasked head. You can actually find them on eBay for a decent price. There's been other suits as well from like Homecoming, which is pretty similar to the Civil War suit. I think that is mainly it. Oh, you have like other ones like the Night Monkey one from Far From Home, the red or black and gold one from No Way Home, but those ones are not as good, not my favorite. But there was only one release for those, and I think that pretty much is all for Tom Holland Spider-Man. Alright, so next we'll move to Captain America, Steve Rogers. So we have Worthy Cap from Endgame. The only really Worthy Cap figure we had was one only released once. So it actually comes with Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. That I think is the best overall figure for Captain America, Steve Rogers. Now that figure itself has been re-released a few different times since then with slightly updated head sculpts, and the paint has been a little bit different. So it was re-released. It doesn't have I don't think it came with the gripping hand, and it doesn't come with Mjolnir for sure. But there's a 2-pack that came with Sam Wilson's Captain America and Steve Rogers, and that's basically the same figure, but the blue is a different shade, and the shield looks slightly different. And then I think, oh yeah, they also released it, or continue to release it in the A-list line, which is basically the line that they just keep in stock in stores. Is basically the same figure that, like, literally you can go to Walmart right now and probably find, but the paint once again is a little different. The blue, I think, is a little bit brighter, but the Worthy cap, I feel like, is more screen accurate, a little bit of a darker blue. But the unmasked head for the newer ones, I think, might be slightly better, but I think the Worthy cap is still the best overall. And then you have the Civil War suit. So I think the best version of that suit is from the first 10 years 2-pack that came with Crossbones. And that one actually has the best shield for Steve Rogers Captain America. The paint apps on that with the maroon and the silver, they look perfect, just like screen accurate. So for the Civil War first 10 years 2-pack one is the best shield for Captain America, but the overall figure is the Worthy cap, I think, is the best. And then they also have a few different ones. So they have, like, from the first Avengers, they released for in-game an updated version of that look for Captain America when he's in that suit. So if you're looking for that, which is one I do want to get at some point, I just haven't gotten around to that one. And there's a few other ones, like the look for Infinity War. They still haven't really gotten a really good look for it, or a really good figure for that look. The first one they released was really bad. The second one, I think, was in the Infinity Saga line. Looks quite a bit better, but it's still not great. And then also, for if you like the look from the Winter Soldier, they released a updated figure for that one in the Infinity Saga line as well. And that one looks a lot better, updated head sculpts, and the figure has been slightly updated. Yeah, I think that mainly covers Steve Rogers. And then we have Thor. So there's a few different, he's had quite a few different looks throughout. So we have the Infinity War look, which I think is probably his best overall look, with the gray, sort of darker tones, and then he has his hair that's shorter. So for that one, I like the release of the figure. For Infinity War, looks really good, the design, but the head sculpt is not great at all. So when I did have that figure, I replaced the head sculpt with the head sculpt from the Ragnarok 2-pack. I believe it was Thor and Valkyrie 2-pack. That head sculpt looked way better on there. So that's what I did with that. I think that was the best combination, because I like the Infinity War look, but the Ragnarok head looked the best on there. And then you go to that 2-pack I was talking about, the Ragnarok 2-pack with Thor and Valkyrie. That figure is actually pretty cool. Like I said, the head sculpt's really good, and that's the Ragnarok look without the helmet. And then there was another, just a single release of Thor for Ragnarok that has the helmet and the sword, I believe. That one's not too bad either, if you're looking for that look. And then also we have the in-game look for Thor. So this one's pretty cool. So it's part of the Infinity Saga line. So it's the look of Thor at the end battle of Endgame. So it's like all black suit with a little bit of a belly and a long beard and everything. So that's a pretty cool figure, especially if you're looking for that specific look. And I do have to mention that there's also the Bro Thor Build-A-Figure. But I'm not the biggest fan of that look. But if you do want that for your shelf, you have to have the Build-A-Figure pieces, or you can just buy the completed Build-A-Figure, which I'm sure is pretty expensive. If you like sort of the more traditional look for Thor, for the, I think it was Thor the Dark World, so for the first 10 years, there was a 2-pack released of Thor and Lady Sif, and I think that's the best look for the sort of traditional Thor look. Looks good in that one. And then for Thor Love and Thunder, the Ravager Thor, I think that head sculpt on that one is probably the best likeness to Chris Hemsworth. I'm not a big fan of that design, like as the figure or the look, but that head sculpt's really good. And then there's the other one from Thor Love and Thunder that has his like actual suit from that movie, which I don't care for that much either. Didn't care for the movie. But if you do like that look, there's only one release of that one. I think that's about it for Thor. Alright, so for Loki, there was an Infinity War 2-pack that came with him and Clorvius Glaive, I believe. And I think that's the best looking version of Loki. I think it came with the Tesseract, the mini Tesseract, which is pretty cool. And then I think the only other one of Loki was from Ragnarok, which is a similar look, but the paint wasn't quite the same, didn't look as good. I think that one did come with like the horns though, the horn thing. And then way back there was a release for the first Avengers movie of Loki, but that one's not very good, doesn't look very good. Hopefully we could get a re-release or like an updated figure from the first Avengers for Loki would be pretty cool. And then if you're wanting his look for the Loki series when he's in the TVA, there's 2 different versions. So there's the version where he has the TVA jacket on, and that one just came in the Disney Plus wave. I think it was the Infinity Ultron Build-A-Figure wave. So that's the only release for that look. But there's also, it came with the big Tesseract, like life-size Tesseract with the figure, and that's more so the accurate, or what he looked like more so in this series for most of it, where he has just a white shirt with the rolled up sleeves and stuff. So that came with the big Tesseract. So I think that's probably your best bet. Oh, and I was going to mention with Loki, so that's for Tom Hiddleston's version of Loki, or like the main version. There's other ones, there's Sylvie, the classic Loki, and I think that's it, but there's only one release for each one of them. Oh, and Mobius, there was a Target exclusive release for Mobius. He comes with the little TemPad and the pruner, which is really cool. There's only one release of that one, and I'm pretty sure it was a Target exclusive. So I just thought I would mention those real quick. Alright, so Black Panther T'Challa. So there's been a few different releases for this character. We have the Legacy line. So we have sort of the, I don't know what it's called. It has the black with the purple where he's charged up, and it has the Chadwick Boseman head sculpt, which is really good. That is the best version for that look. And then there's also, I think they released in that same line, the Legacy line, it was the all black suit from Civil War with a slightly different Chadwick Boseman head sculpt. I believe that one had like a smirk or something, it was slightly different than the other one. But those I think are the best versions because they come with the Chadwick Boseman head sculpt, and the figures overall are pretty good. And then they also have sort of the original look. So like it's the one that he wore in like Infinity War and stuff, but it's not charged up purple. So that was released for the first Black Panther wave, but I don't think it came with the Chadwick Boseman head sculpt. Well, it did, but it didn't look like Chadwick Boseman, if that makes sense. So it's a good looking figure, just the head sculpt with it wasn't great, so I thought I'd mention that one. Next we have Deadpool. So for Deadpool, I think the one with the 2-pack for Negasonic Teenage Warhead, I think is my favorite because it came with quite a few accessories, quite a bit of hands, and some knives and swords and everything. And I like the sort of the darker red look rather than the brighter red in the Deadpool and Wolverine, but that's just my opinion. Looks a little bit more worn and I don't know, looks a little bit better to me. So that one's pretty cool. And then they re-released that figure with the I think it was the white tank top Logan figure. So I think it was pretty similar. It didn't have quite as many accessories, I don't believe, and I'd have to take a closer look to actually notice if there's any difference between the two. And then obviously there is the new Deadpool figure from Deadpool and Wolverine's, a little bit brighter, doesn't have quite as many accessories, and it really just depends on your preference if you like the brighter suit or the darker suit. I personally like the darker suit, but that's up to you. I just thought I would let you know either way. Alright, so now for Wolverine. So we have the yellow and blue one from Deadpool and Wolverine, which I personally think is the best because I really like the yellow and blue suit, but also the unmasked head sculpt on that looks just like Hugh Jackman. That's the best one out of all of the figures. So I think that one's my favorite, but there's also been some other releases. So they did like an X-Men line. So it had there's one with the brown jacket, which is pretty cool. I really like because it looks cool. It has the weathering and stuff on the jacket, which looks really good. And it has the 2 different head sculpts, but the head sculpts in the face don't look quite as good as the red and blue one, or not the red and blue, the yellow and blue one, but it looks decent and you can tell that it's Hugh Jackman. I really like that look a lot with the brown jacket, looks good, and the jeans and everything. And then also there's the white tank top one. So I think it was originally a Amazon exclusive one, but then they re-released it with the Deadpool figure for the Legacy line. And that's a pretty cool figure as well. And that one comes with the bone claws or the metal claws, which is pretty cool. And then there's also the Old Man Logan one. So this one came in a 2-pack. So it was the Old Man Logan with the Charles Xavier one from the Logan movie. That one's pretty cool, especially if you're looking for that look. He is pretty expensive now, though. That 2-pack in general is pretty expensive. Alright, and then there's a few other X-Men characters I wanted to mention, like Mystique. So far, there's only been one release of her from the X-Men movies, which, granted, a lot of these characters aren't officially MCU characters yet, but in some ways they are. And then Charles Xavier, Professor X, and Magneto. For Professor X, he's had 2 different versions released. So they had the one that I was talking about with the Old Man Logan. So it's the older Charles Xavier, the one that's in the Logan movie. Then also he was in another 2-pack. So this 2-pack's pretty cool. So this is the 2-pack with him and Magneto. So this one has the sort of traditional look for Charles Xavier in those movies, comes with the wheelchair, and comes with the interchangeable heads, so you can have either the Patrick Stewart version or the James McAvoy version, so the first class or the older version. And then For Magneto, there's only been the one release, which is in this 2-pack. So this one's pretty cool because it has 4 different heads. So it has the helmeted and unhelmeted version of the Ian McKellen older X-Men one, and then the newer First Class version has the helmeted and unhelmeted version for both of those. So that's pretty neat that you can have sort of whichever version you're wanting. And then we have Hulk or Bruce Banner. So we really haven't had that many releases for Hulk, so hopefully we get some new ones here soon. I think the best version, in my opinion, is the one from the first 10 years 2-pack. So this one came with Hulk and Hulkbuster. So the Hulk is from the Age of Ultron Avengers movie, but this one is slightly updated, better paint apps, and better head sculpt. So I think that's the best overall version, in my opinion, because it's the Savage Hulk, and the head sculpt and everything and the paint apps look the best overall, I think, on this figure. And then the other one is the Gladiator Hulk. So they had 2 different releases for the Gladiator Hulk. So initially, I think it was a Build-A-Figure, but then they re-released it slightly updated, I think with another head sculpt, and it was an Amazon exclusive deluxe figure that you could buy. So I think the Amazon exclusive deluxe Gladiator Hulk and the sort of Savage Hulk from that 2-pack are the best versions. And then we also have Bruce Banner. So we've had 2 different Bruce Banners released. One was in I believe it was a 4-pack for Age of Ultron. That one wasn't bad for the time, but compared to today, it's pretty outdated. But we did here recently just get a new Bruce Banner figure from the Infinity Saga line, and I believe that's his look for like Infinity War, and that one looks pretty good. That's a figure I do want to get here soon. It's definitely the best looking version of Bruce Banner we've gotten. And there's the Hulkbuster. So like I was talking about in that 2-pack for the first 10 years, that's the best looking version of the Hulkbuster. The only other version we had was a Build-A-Figure that was released during Age of Ultron, and that one the paint apps weren't quite as good, a little bit too bright on the Build-A-Figure, but in the 2-pack it's more accurate, has more of a shiny maroon and gold colors. Next we have Ant-Man. So the best overall looking figure, in my opinion, is the Quantumania Ant-Man figure, because the overall design of the suit looks really good. And this is the first version to where they actually made the lenses on the helmet to where you could see through them and see the eyes. So I think that one's the best overall. There was one released for the first 10 years, which was the look for the first Ant-Man movie, I believe. That one's kind of cool because the 2-pack with Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket. And I had the Yellow Jacket at one point and I sold them, and I wish I wouldn't have now. But they also came with the tiny versions of them. And I still have the tiny version of Ant-Man from that, which is really, really cool. And it had a tiny version of Yellow Jacket, which I think I still have as well. I just don't have the big version of Yellow Jacket. I think the best overall look is the Quantumania Ant-Man one. And then there's also like the Giant Man Build-A-Figure was from Civil War. And then they re-released that as a deluxe, the Giant Man one. So it just depends on what you're looking for on that one. And then for Wasp, so this one is going to vary depending on your preference, but for me, I like the one from Ant-Man and the Wasp the best. Has sort of the gold color, and you can see through the lenses in the eye, look pretty good. And the unmasked Evangeline Lilly head sculpt is okay. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's decent. But the one for Quantumania, the head sculpt is way better, looks more so like her, but I don't care for the bright yellow as much. That's my opinion. Some people like the bright yellow more. but I believe those are the only 2 releases for Wasp. And then we'll go down to Star-Lord. So for Star-Lord, there was a Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 release. So for the Volume 1, the head sculpt and stuff wasn't that great, but he has sort of the long trench coat. It's not my favorite look. But then there's the Volume 2 one. So I think for Volume 2, they also re-released the long jacket one, but then they also had the one where he has just the short regular jacket, and there was a single release with the wave, and then there was also one where he was released in a 2-pack with Ego. I like the 2-pack one. Has the 2 different head sculpts, and then it comes with the Walkman, I think, and then the blasters, which is pretty cool. That one's probably my favorite overall one. And then they have the Volume 3 one, which the head sculpt on that one is way better. The unmasked one, it doesn't come with a mask, but just the unmasked one looks really good. And it comes with new blasters, but the detail on the blasters aren't as good on that. And I felt like the blue on that Volume 3 suit, well, on all those suits, was a little bit too bright compared to the movie, was a little bit of a darker blue. But the Volume 3 head sculpt's really good. And then there was also a 5-pack that was released. I think it was a Disney exclusive or something. And that one's pretty much just like the Volume 2 release. It might be slightly different, but it's basically the same. And then we'll go ahead, and since we're talking about the Guardians, we'll go to Yondu, which Yondu, we've only had one release. It was for Volume 2, and it came with the Volume 1 and Volume 2 different heads. And then for Rocket, so we have the Volume 1, Rocket wasn't the greatest. He came with sort of the orange suit. But then Volume 2, so we had, I think we might have had 2 different releases for Volume 2, but we had one that was released. He had the guns, and then the alternate head that had, one was just a normal head, the other one was him like with his mouth open yelling, and he came with the Baby Groot, which was in the Ravager suit. I think that's my favorite one overall. And then there was also a release for Infinity War where it came in a 3-pack with Thor with like the sleeveless thing. I forgot to mention that one with Thor, but that's not the greatest look. He has the eye patch. Forgot about that one. It comes with the big sword. But anyway, and then it came with Rocket, which was basically the same as the Volume 2 released one. And then it came with Teen Groot with the little gaming pad, which was pretty cool. And then we have the Volume 3 Rocket. So that one, he comes with the blue suit. And I'm not the biggest fan of the blue suits, but the overall figure, I think, is really good for Volume 3. The paint apps and the sculpt is a lot better than the Volume 3 Rocket. But I still like the Volume 2 the best overall. I like the look, and the guns had way more detail and everything on them. And the alternate heads was nice as well. And there was also the one for, like, once again I mentioned the 5-pack that was the Disney exclusive one. I think that one was pretty much the same as the Volume 2 one. Most of those in there were basically just like the Volume 2 figures. Some of them slightly different. Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to Groot. So we have the Evolution of Groot 3-pack, I guess you could say. I think that was a Toys R Us exclusive back in the day. But it came with the original Groot, the tiny baby Groot with him waving, which is one of my favorite figures in my whole collection. He's just so cute. Then the potted Groot, which is like the newborn Groot. And those are all very, very good figures. Like I mentioned, there's the baby Groot in the Ravager suit, the Rocket Volume 2 figure, and then for the original Groot, this is the second release of that one. So they had, for Volume 1, I believe, they had the original Groot, but he was a Build-A-Figure for that wave. But this one, and the Evolution of Groot, is much better. The paint apps and everything just look a lot better on that. Then if you're looking for the Teen Groot, so there's been 2 different versions. So the one I mentioned earlier was in the Infinity War 3-pack. Came with the little gaming device that you see him use, which is the coolest part of that 3-pack in my opinion. But the figure itself wasn't great. But in Thor Love and Thunder, they released another updated Teen Groot, which is pretty cool. I think the best version of Teen Groot. Look, the paint apps and everything look more accurate, and he has sort of the arm that's stretched out and everything, and I believe he comes with a gun as well. That is the best version of Teen Groot, but I do like the little gaming deal that he comes with in the 3-pack from Infinity War. And then last but not least, we have the Volume 3 Groot. So we've only had one release of that one so far, which was in the Volume 3 wave. He was just a deluxe figure by himself. There's only been one release of him. He comes with the wings and everything, but I'm not the biggest fan of that one because the paint apps aren't great, and it's a very dark brown compared to he's supposed to be a lighter brown, almost a tannish color. So I'm not the biggest fan of that, and I'm not the biggest fan of Volume 3 looking Groot as well, but I thought I would mention it. It's the only version of the Volume 3 Groot that we have so far. So next we'll move to Gamora. So for Gamora, at the moment we only have 2 releases, sort of 3. So we have the Volume 1 version, which is horrible, doesn't look good at all. Then we have the Volume 2 one, which is the best looking one. And then we have basically the same Volume 2 one, which was released in that Disney exclusive one. Once again, basically the same figure. But that actually looks like the character is really good and is the best looking version of Gamora that we have so far. I'm still waiting for Marvel Legends to release a Volume 3 Gamora figure, which I don't see happening anytime soon. So as of right now, the Volume 2 Gamora is the best we've got. Alright, so now we'll move on to Nebula. So for Nebula, we have 2 releases. So we have the Volume 2 one, which in my opinion is the best looking one. Comes with the detachable claw hand and stuff, and the gun, and just the overall look looks better. And then we have the one for Volume 3. The head's a little bit bigger, probably more accurate, but I don't like the suit, and then the paint apps just aren't great on the Volume 3 one. And then we sort of had a different release. So for Endgame, we had the 2-pack that came with the sort of in-game time suits that were gray instead of white like they were in the movie, but it had a bunch of different heads that you could swap out, and one of those was Nebula's head. So I mean, if you want to count that, I mean, I guess. So yeah, the Volume 2 one I think is the best for that, for Nebula. Then we have Drax. So for Drax, we had one for Volume 1, which had the red pants and the knives. The head sculpt wasn't quite as good, and just the overall paint apps weren't quite as good. But for Volume 2, it was basically the same figure, just slightly different head and blue pants instead of the red, and the knives had a lot more detail, which was good. For Volume 3, the head sculpt on Volume 3 is the best for Dave Bautista, because like the Volume 2 and Volume 1 doesn't even look anything like Dave Bautista. But I do like the Volume 2 one because he's like screaming, which is more like Drax's personality. So the Volume 3 one, I wish we would have gotten 2 different heads. The normal one, like the screaming one. But also the Volume 3 one came with the knives, but they're just cheap plastic. There's no paint apps or anything on them. So Volume 2 one is still my favorite, except for the head sculpt. I do like the one from Volume 3. Once again, there was a Drax in that 5-pack for the Disney exclusive one, and that one did have a slightly different head sculpt, I believe, from the Volume 2 one. So it is slightly different, but I think it was pretty similar, basically the same. And then there's other ones that only had a few, or like 1, maybe 2 releases of the Guardians figures. So we have Ego, which I believe only had the 1 release in that 2-pack. We have Kraglin, which only had the release in the Volume 3. We have the Cosmo Build-A-Figure from the Volume 3 wave. That's the only version we have of Cosmo character, Adam Warlock. We only have that one release of him for Volume 3. Mantis. So for Mantis, we have two different ones. So the first one is a Build-A-Figure from Volume 2, which is the best version of Mantis, and it's in her normal look with the green suit. And then we have one that was released for Volume 3, but she's in the blue suit. The head sculpt looks slightly better in Volume 3, but once again, I prefer the green suit rather than the blue suit. So I think that mainly covers the Guardians, unless I'm forgetting someone. Oh, there was the Collector. So there's only been one release of the Collector, and I believe he was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive a long time ago. That is a figure that I would like to get at some point, but he's pretty expensive and hard to find. And it's a small character, so I'm not super worried about it, but it is one that I would like to get at some point. And then Ronan, the villain from the first Guardians, was released for the first 10 years line. He was released, there's only been one release of that figure, which that figure is actually pretty good. It has a lot of detail, and his staff that he has is pretty cool. Alright, so we'll move on now. So we'll move on to Black Widow. So Black Widow really hasn't had that many, well, she's had quite a few releases actually. So for me, my favorite, I like the in-game release. So this one is a really rare one and hard to find. So I believe it was like just a international exclusive. So it came with her in-game look with the in-game suit and the red hair with the braid with the little bit of blonde at the end. So I used to have this figure, but I sold it, and I wish I wouldn't have, because now it's gone up even more so in price. But for this one, this is probably my favorite overall look for Black Widow for in-game. The figure overall is pretty good, but it is expensive and hard to find. And then they have the Infinity Saga one that they just released. So it has the two different head sculpts. So one for the first Avengers and one for the Winter Soldier, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So that one's pretty good. It has a better likeness to Scarlett Johansson in the face. And I like that you can have sort of two different looks for two different movies if you want. And then there's also the one that was released for the Black Widow movie. I believe this one was with the white suit, but I do like the white suit, but I like seeing her in the black suit. Looks better, I believe. So yeah, I think those are the best versions. Then also there's release for Infinity War that has her with her short blonde hair, which I don't really like that look for Black Widow. But if you are wanting that look, there's been only one release of that look. I believe is part of the Cole Obsidian Build-A-Figure wave. But yeah, I think probably the best two versions are the in-game suit or look, but that one's hard to find, or the new Infinity Saga one from Avengers or Winter Soldier. Alright, so now we'll move on to Shuri's Black Panther, or just Shuri. Shuri's Black Panther suit, there's only been one release, and that was the one for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. But for Shuri herself, there's been two different releases. So the original one was released for the first Black Panther movie, and then the second one was basically the same figure, just slightly updated for the Black Panther Legacy line, which is a little bit better, but not by much. So we'll move on to War Machine. For me, I like the Civil War suit. I don't remember what the name of that suit is, but the one from Civil War is my favorite. So the original one was released in, I believe, a 3 or 4 pack for Civil War, and it came with quite a few accessories. Then I think it was released again with the Giant Man Build-A-Figure wave, and then here just recently they released it again in the Infinity Saga line. So that's a really good look for War Machine. Probably my favorite overall. It comes with quite a few accessories. And then also I like the two different suits from Endgame for War Machine. So you have sort of the more bulkier suit that was still silver, and then basically that same look but in the Iron Patriot look with the red, white, and blue. So those are my three favorites for War Machine. So for Captain Marvel, I think the best release so far is the one that they recently released for the Marvels. I think the likeness to Brie Larson in that one is the best, and it has the best overall look as far as the suit design and everything. Also, I like the one from Endgame. It was a 2-pack. I think it was Amazon exclusive. So she had the shorter hair, and it came with the rescue armor Pepper Potts. In that 2-pack, the likeness looks pretty good in that one as well, and it comes with the Nano Gauntlet. But I think the Marvels one is probably the best overall for likeness and overall look. So now for Doctor Strange. So I think Doctor Strange, the best version is the No Way Home Doctor Strange figure. It looks the best overall. There was another one released for Infinity War. Came in a 3-pack with an Iron Man Mark 50 and a Thanos, I believe it was. That one had sort of the time stone effect on his arm, which was pretty cool, but the head sculpt wasn't the greatest. Then we'll move on to Wanda. So I think the best version of her was from the Infinity War 2-pack with Vision. And then, so with Vision, also the best version is from that 2-pack from Infinity War. And with Vision, I think there was only one other release of Vision, which was part of an Endgame Bro Thor build figure, I believe. But that one's not quite as good. It's more translucent rather than just solid Vision. So for Hawkeye, there really hasn't been that many releases. There was one back for, I think, the original Avengers, and then one for Age of Ultron, but the looks and the head sculpts are pretty outdated for today. The most recent updated ones that we have, the best overall one I think is the one that was released for the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus. It was part of the Infinity Ultron Build-A-Figure wave. That one I think is the best likeness to Jeremy Renner in the face sculpt, and the best overall look because he comes with the bow. Just the purple and black looks the best overall. And then there's also the Ronin figure. So the Ronin figure, which is the black suit that he wore at the beginning of Endgame. So there was 2 different releases for that one. So we had one release for Endgame wave, and then we had just here recently for the Hawkeye series, they re-released it, but with a Jeremy Renner unmasked head sculpt with sort of the wet, slick back hair. And that head sculpt actually looks pretty good on there, but I'm not the biggest fan of the hair being slicked back. Looks sort of weird. But that's a pretty solid figure as well. And there was also a release for Endgame, the 2-pack that I was talking about earlier, that came with the 2 suits of the time heist suits. It came with a Jeremy Renner head sculpt in that, where it was his Ronin look with sort of like the Mohawk type look. And that, I like the head sculpt a lot. The face on it doesn't look the most like Jeremy Renner, but I like the hairstyle and everything. I used to have that head sculpt with the Ronin figure, which was pretty cool, but the face definitely doesn't look as good on that. So I think the best overall one is the one released for the Hawkeye series with the purple and black. I think is my favorite overall. The head does look a little too small on that figure, but it does look good. Next, we will go to Miss Marvel. So Miss Marvel has already had 2 different releases. So the one for the Miss Marvel series with the light blue, the head sculpt's not the greatest on that one, but I like the suit design. I think is the best with the light blue. Looks really good. And then they released a figure for the Marvels. So the head sculpt on that one looks really good, but I don't like the design of the suit very much. That's more of a personal preference, but I think the light blue one looks better overall. And then we'll go to the next person here, Daredevil or Matt Murdock. So for Daredevil, there's only been one release, basically. There's about to be two. So we had the Netflix Daredevil released quite a while back, and that's still a pretty solid figure considering when it was released. The face still doesn't hold up a whole lot for today, but I mean it looks decent for when it was made. I believe there was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive one where it had a Matt Murdock unmasked head sculpt, which would be pretty cool, but I'm sure that's pretty expensive. And we're about to get a new Daredevil figure for Daredevil Born Again, which I haven't really seen it in hand yet, but I can pretty much tell you that one's going to be better because the technology advanced so much just from the renderings, you can tell. And then for Matt Murdock, we had the one for No Way Home, which the glasses and stuff and the face doesn't look great on it. It's basically just a civilian figure, but it comes with the brick and the cane, which is sort of cool. Next, we have Punisher. So we had a release for Punisher on Netflix as well, and that's a decent figure once again for when it was made, but compare that head sculpt to the new one, it's night and day difference. That's still a good figure for when it was released, but I think the one that we're about to get from Born Again is going to be so much better. So if you're looking for those figures, I would suggest getting the Daredevil and the Punisher from Born Again. They're going to be way better upgrades from the previous ones. And then we'll go to Moon Knight. So I'm going to go through some of these that have only had one release. So Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, Khonshu, which was a Build-A-Figure, and then Kate Bishop from Hawkeye, Shang-Chi, and Namor from Wakanda Forever. Those have all only had one release so far. Next, we'll move to Sam Wilson's Falcon and Sam Wilson's Captain America. First, we'll do Sam Wilson's Captain America because there's only been a few of those released. For Sam Wilson's Captain America, we had the white and blue suit, which is my favorite version of his suit, which came from the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV series. And then there's the Build-A-Figure parts that gave him the wings and everything, which was really cool. So that's my favorite overall look for Sam Wilson's Captain America. Then they re-released Sam Wilson's Captain America with the white suit in a 2-pack with Steve Rogers, which is basically the same figure, just without the wings and everything. But then for Brave New World, we had the blue suit, which is horrible. Does not look good. The blue suit in the movie doesn't look too bad, but the suit or the figure that they released is garbage. But then for the Falcon version of Sam Wilson, I like the 2-pack from Infinity War that came with Sam Wilson's Falcon and Bucky, Winter Soldier. I think that's my favorite look for Falcon. And then there's also the new Falcon that they released for Brave New World, Torres, something Torres. That's only had one release. I haven't really got to look at that figure too much, but I didn't care for the movie, so I didn't get any of those figures from that wave. And then, so we'll go to Bucky. So once again, for that one, I like the one they released in that 2-pack with Falcon for Infinity War was pretty good. But I also like the updated one for the Falcon and Winter Soldier series where he has the shorter hair. That one looks pretty good as well. And then they also released an updated like Winter Soldier look where he has the mask, but it was sort of more of his Winter Soldier look for that series. That one's pretty good as well. And then I hope we get an updated one for Bucky for Thunderbolts, but I don't know if we will or not. I would imagine they would, but I don't know. So we'll move on here. Some other ones that have only been released once. So we have She-Hulk from the She-Hulk series, which that figure is actually pretty good. And then Cassie Lang from Quantumania. We've only gotten a big Build-A-Figure version of her, and I want like a regular scale version of her. Alright, so now I'm going to go through the Thanos figures. So my favorite one is the look that he has for Infinity War, where he has like the sleeveless things and the gauntlet. And they had a few different versions of that one, but my favorite version is the one from the Infinity War. I think it might have been the first 10 years 3-pack. It came with Thanos, Doctor Strange, and the Mark 50 Iron Man. That one I think is the best looking Thanos figure for me, because it has the gauntlet and then the two different head sculpts, sort of the grimacing one and the regular head sculpt. And then even for the gauntlet hand, it has sort of the claw and then the fisted part. And that's my favorite overall look for them. There's been several different releases of that. Like the first one was like a Build-A-Figures that didn't look good at all. The paint was horrible. And then I also like the armored Thanos look from Endgame, the final battle. I believe it was a Build-A-Figure, but that one looked really good. And then I think the sleeveless version from Infinity War, they released again in I think it was like a 5-pack. They came with the Black Order. That one's basically the same, but I think it might be slightly different, but I still like that one too. So those are my main 2 favorite ones for Thanos. There's also the final snap one that came with the Mark 85 Iron Man that I was talking about earlier. And this one's the one where he's half snapped and stuff. That one is okay, but I don't like it as much because it's him like fading away. I would rather just have him normal. But with the Black Order, those are my favorite versions in that pack, because the Cold Obsidian, which is the big guy, that has his accurate look in that pack, because the Build-A-Figure one they released before that was inaccurate to the screen or to the movie. So yeah, that one I think is the best for the Black Order if you're looking for those. And then we'll move on to some other ones. So these are some sort of MCU villains, or just characters that, once again, have only had one release. So we have Green Goblin from No Way Home. We have Kang from Quantumania. We have like He Who Remains from Loki, but it's a different variant. And then we have Zemo, which was from Falcon Winter Soldier series. He's only been released that once. Grandmaster. So he sort of had 2 different releases. So he had a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive one with the collector. And then he was also released in a 2-pack with Korg for Ragnarok. And then Korg, I believe, has only had 2 different releases. So he was in that 2-pack that I mentioned with Grandmaster for Ragnarok. And then he was also released as a Build-A-Figure for Thor Love and Thunder for that wave. Love and Thunder one looks better for the paint apps, but I like the design of the one from Ragnarok better. Valkyrie. So for Valkyrie, she has a pretty cool look for the one they released for Endgame with like the all white suit. That's pretty cool. And then the one for Love and Thunder I think is the best overall, because the head sculpt and the face looks way better, and the design of the suit is white and black, which looks kind of cool. And then there was one other release for Ragnarok, which the face didn't look the greatest on that one. So US Agent. So we have a few different releases for that one. Best one is the newest release of John Walker for the Thunderbolts. In that 2-pack, he looks the best in that one. And then we also have the one that came in the Disney Plus wave from Falcon and Winter Soldier. And that one was released several different times. So the original one. And there's one, I think a Walmart exclusive, where it's a little bit brighter blue with the unmasked head sculpt, stuff like that. But the one from Thunderbolts is definitely the best. So if you're looking for that figure, I would go and buy that 2-pack. It's just now coming out right now. And then a few other ones that only have single releases. So we have Quicksilver, which was part of the Infinity Saga line from Age of Ultron. Louise from the Ant-Man movies. That came in a Ghost 2-pack. And that's also the only Ghost figure that we have so far. Hopefully we get one for Thunderbolts, but not so far. And then also Ned. So we've only had one Ned, and that was released in the Spider-Man Homecoming 2-pack, but it was one that was released and it came with Ned and then Peter Parker in a 2-pack, which is a good 2-pack. It's the only Peter Parker figure we have of Tom Holland's Spider-Man as well, and the only Ned figure, and it comes with the backpacks and stuff. It's pretty cool. As civilian figures go, those are probably the coolest ones. And for MJ, we have the newest one from No Way Home, and then we have the one from, I believe, Homecoming. It came with MJ and then the Spider-Man with the yellow jacket. That one had two different head sculpts, and I think I like that one slightly better. It had like the ponytail and then the hair down version, but the one from No Way Home's not bad. The face might be slightly better, but not by a bunch. You can get her for pretty cheap, the new one, so those are both about the same to me. Yelena Belova. So we've had 3 releases of her. The best one is the newest one. It came in the Thunderbolts 2-pack. It came with her and Red Guardian. That's the best likeness to her in the face, and I think her best overall look. The second best one is the one that got released for the Hawkeye series. The likeness to her looks pretty good in that one, but the overall design of the figure and her look isn't my favorite in that. And then the other one, which was the first one, was from the Black Widow movie. Did not look good at all. You can barely tell the likeness of her in the face, but that figure's not great. And then Red Guardian, it's a toss-up for me between the new one that came out in the Thunderbolts 2-pack with Yelena and the one that was released, the second one that was released for Black Widow. It came in that 2-pack with the mom with the white suit. That Red Guardian, I like the design of the suit better. He came with his tiny little action figure, which was really cool. I like that, and he has a shield. The new one, the head sculpts are, especially the unmasked one, is a lot better, but I don't like the design of the suit as much, and he doesn't come with a shield or that many great accessories really, so it's sort of a tie between those two for me. And the only other Red Guardian one we had was the first one they released for the Black Widow movie, which was not good at all, looked nothing like David Harbour. And there's a few other ones here that have only been released once. So we have Wong, which was just the one from Multiverse of Madness. Riri Williams, which was the red suit from Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Monica Rambeau Photon from the Marvels, which is actually a really good figure, but we've only had one release of that one. And then the Eternals, we've only had one release of each of those figures, which was in the Eternals wave, which are all not very good. All the figures aren't very good, and the movie wasn't very good. I think the Angelina Jolie one is probably my favorite out of all of those, but I still don't like most of them. Taskmaster from Black Widow, we only had one release so far of that one. Hopefully we get one for Thunderbolts at some point. Ultron, we've had sort of 2 releases. So the first one was a Build-A-Figure, and the second one they re-released with a lot better paint apps for the First 10 Years line, which is a pretty cool figure. And then Gore the God Butcher from Thor Love and Thunder. Once again, we've only had him released once. Kingpin from Hawkeye, which was also Kingpin from Daredevil. We've only had one release of that one. He's undersized, but I'm glad that we at least have that character in figure form. And then all the Fantastic Four, which they just now came out, and we only have one version of all of them so far. Still waiting on Herbie and Franklin Richards and stuff. And then Jimmy Woo from Ant-Man and the Wasp and from WandaVision. And then Jane Foster's Mighty Thor. We only have one version of her from Thor Love and Thunder, which is actually a pretty good figure. And so for Sentry from Thunderbolts, obviously there's only one release of him so far, which is in the Thunderbolts 2-pack with John Walker. And then obviously the other No Way Home villains like Sandman, Doc Ock, Lizard, Electro, all those, there's only been one release of. And then Venom, So, which Venom's technically not in the MCU, but he sort of is, sort of isn't. There's been a release for the first Venom, and then Let There Be Carnage. I think there was one, had the different heads that popped out. That one was pretty cool. So for some of the other ones, there was an Iron Fist. So there was only one released that I know of, and it was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive one, and that is hard to find and pretty expensive. And for me, it's like, it's not one of my favorite characters, so I'm not going to pay. I think last time I looked, it was selling for over $100. I'm not going to pay that for a character that I somewhat like, but not really. But anyway, Nick Fury, there's only really been 2 releases, I think, of Nick Fury. So there's the first one that came in that 3-pack with Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and Agent Coulson for the first Avengers movie. And then the recent release of Nick Fury for the Secret Invasion series. I do wish they would release like a first Avengers look, but an updated figure, because like I like that look of Nick Fury for the first Avengers, but that's such an outdated figure now. I mean, it still doesn't look bad for the time that it was made. It still looks pretty good, but I would like an updated one, because I have the one from Secret Invasion because the updated face looks better, but the figure itself is garbage. I like the one from the first Avengers better in the look and everything, but the head sculpt for the new Nick Fury one is better. So I hope they do an updated version of that. And then with like Maria Hill and Agent Coulson, I believe that's the only release we've gotten of those 2 figures, was in that 3-pack with Nick Fury for the first Avengers movie. And I do wish we would get updated figures for both of those, especially Phil Coulson. There's Okoye from Black Panther. So I believe the first one for the first Black Panther movie, she was a Build-A-Figure, and that one was okay but not great. And then for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, they released her as her own figure, and it was updated, and that one's a lot better. So I would recommend getting the Wakanda Forever one. That one's a slightly better looking one. Then Nakia from Black Panther, first one, she was released in sort of the orange look. And the second one for the Wakanda Forever, she was in the water suit or whatever, is blue and green. That one's not great. The head sculpt looks good, but I'm not a big fan of that look. We have Everett Ross. So he had 2 different releases. For the first Black Panther movie, he was released in a 2-pack with Killmonger. And that one's decent, but the head sculpt for the new one, for I believe is part of the Legacy line or the Wakanda Forever line. I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but that one's way better. The head sculpt's like spot on. And then Crossbones, like I mentioned earlier, he's in that 2-pack for the first 10 years 2-pack from Civil War with Captain America. That's the only release we've gotten of Crossbones. And then Red Hulk. So Red Hulk, the only one we have is from Brave New World, which is not a great figure, honestly, in my opinion, especially the face. But that's the only release we have of him so far for the MCU. Probably the only one we'll get, to be honest. Then Red Skull. So Red Skull, we have, I believe, only 2 releases. There was a one for the first 10 years. That one's pretty good, and you have the head swapped out so you can make him like a Hydra soldier if you want, which was pretty cool. And then there was another one, a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive one, that was released with the Tesseract, sort of like the Loki one, but it was slightly different, but I can't remember exactly. It wasn't a major difference. M'Baku from Black Panther. So the original Black Panther movie, I believe he was a Build-A-Figure, but that one was pretty good. But and then for Wakanda Forever or the Legacy, yeah, it was the Legacy line. It was a Target exclusive one. They re-released that M'Baku figure just as a single release. So the Target exclusive one's slightly better, I think, in some ways, but the Build-A-Figure did have some better paint apps in some spots. But I think the head sculpt might be better on the Target exclusive one. But it's been a while since I've looked at those. I think that pretty much covers all the different characters that I can think of for the MCU, what figure is best for them. And if I've forgotten any, please let me know in the comments. I think I covered most of them. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a pretty long video, but I tried to be pretty in-depth and cover as many characters as I could. Let me know what you guys think of all these different characters, which ones are your favorites. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.